So I'm about to build all the Strontium Dog miniatures. I'll be basing them as well, so I've got some rocks and some filler to do the bases, which I'll put to one side. I've got super glue for gluing the models, a craft knife for removing mould lines, clippers for things like removing the bases from the frame. So I'm not going to subject you to watching me clip all the bases out, but they're also useful for going over and identifying any areas where you need to remove mould lines. So I'm going to look very carefully at this model. It's such a good cast, there's very little to actually remove. So I'm going to go over everything. Most of these are one-piece models, which is going to make them awfully easy to put together. Checking them over for mould lines so that you can remove them. Again, such a beautiful cast. There's very little to do. You got a little bit on the bottom of the base. You've got a tiny bit here. You've got a tiny bit along this arm. But the models themselves are so well cast, cleanup is going to be real quick. So I'm just going to go over them. It's mainly just taking stuff off the bottom. I mean, this guy's got a tiny little tag on the back of his leg and a little bit of stuff around the bottom of his coat. But they're such good, clean sculpts. So I'll be back in a minute where I've gone over all of them for mould lines and I've cut all the bases out to show you how I put them together. So I've cleaned up all the models and I'm ready to start basing them. I've got two multi-part models here, both of which have got guns that go across the chest. So I'm going to test and see. Yeah, that'll go in like that. Yep. So I'm going to apply drops of super glue to here, and I'm going to slot that in like so, and then I'm going to get rid of the excess super glue with a quick run of a tissue. So that's the first one. Let's check this one. Because of the design, you're able to, certainly that one went in beautifully. This one might need a little bit more persuading. I'm actually going to need to bend that very slightly. Yeah, that fits now. But I'm going to apply a tiny bit of liquid green stuff. Around there. And around there. So that the join is not as obvious. So then leave that dry for a moment. So I've got the super glue, I've got a bunch of models that can go straight on the bases because they're one piece. Gronk, skull, stern hammer, legs, Max Bubba, Johnny Alpha, this guy whose name I can't remember, and this guy. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to add some rocks to the bases, because otherwise the filler will just make it completely smooth. So I add in some rocks, I break up an otherwise reasonably smooth surface, before I put the sand on. So it'll be like rocky desert basically. Strontium Dog is very much on old western style sci-fi. So you've got lots of duels in the sun, lots of homesteads, lots of rocky deserts, which inevitably leads to lots of gunfights. So in a minute I'm going to come back when the glue on these rocks is dry, and I'm going to apply the filler. So I'll see you in a second. The models have dried, and I'm ready to put some filler on the bases. So because I've got rocks on them, it means I've got a nice 3D effect, because otherwise it's very flat bases, as if there's no terrain features around. So I get a bit of the filler and I start working it into all the gaps where the rocks aren't. So I will be putting some sand on top of this, so it won't be as flat as it's looking now. But this will need a good well, couple of hours to dry. So we've got a base with some rocks and a miniature, which is only some sand away from being ready to undercoat. So I'm going to do the rest of these off camera, and then I'm going to come back and show you the results. So I've got a beat up old brush, some basing sand and some PVA glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the glue to the base, making sure to get it underneath the Gronk's medical bag. Don't put it on the rocks, but do put it next to the rocks. Get it by the Gronk's toes. Pop them in the basing sand, tap the loose sand off and leave that to dry. So I'm going to do all of these models exactly like that, and then I'm going to thin this PVA down and just drop it onto it so that that dries hard, because otherwise you'll lose sand later on, particularly when you paint it. So I want to get it completely solid so that it'll take a good dry brush, because most of painting the desert bases is going to be dry brushing. But that, let's zoom in, that's a nice little figure. Won't take me too long to paint up either. So I'll be back in a moment with everything based. So this is how the models look when the basing is dry. So you can see the level of detail on the sculpts here. It looks really good. So you've got 5 outlaws, 3 strontium dogs, 40 notoriety forces each side. The sculpting is really impressive. Putting them together is really easy. You can see just how good Johnny Alpha is as a sculpt. How good even the Gronk is as a sculpt in terms of how it looks like the comics. Again, Wolf Sternhammer looks great too. But I really like the character of some of the muties. So you got Legs McPhee, you got Skull, you got Brute Mosley, you got Max Bubba, and you've got Impetigo Jones. So the level of character in the sculpts is great. I really like how they're put together. These are based, ready to be undercoated a light grey. They'll all be reasonably colourful models, and the ones that are going to have some darker coats on, it'll be fairly easy to just go over the light grey areas with a wash and then use that to build up the appropriate colour. But the muties are all really nice models. So, if you've liked this video, hit like or subscribe. If you feel strongly, leave a comment below. But otherwise, good gaming.